chairpersons for your good words, and ladies and gentlemen who are present here on this Sunday morning. I know that there is a time crunch, but the topic is such that it's extremely difficult actually to cover basics even of mechanical ventilation in such a short time span, but I'll try to do justice over the next 20 minutes as to how anybody, for that matter, not anesthesiologist, but the idea of my presentation is to acquaint you all from all specialties how to get started with mechanical ventilation. I'm not going to go into the details of advanced modes and whatever other things are there, the nitty-gritties of ventilation, because time will not permit that. So our areas of discussion today will include indications of mechanical ventilation, negative vis-a-vis positive pressure ventilators, ventilator settings and the different vocabularies we use while setting the ventilator, advantages and disadvantages of various modes of ventilation in a nutshell, troubleshooting. There are many times when we are called, or the physician or the critical care specialists are called for troubleshooting, complications of mechanical ventilation and future advanced modes of ventilation, how it stands today. The indications, as we all know, respiratory failure is the first major indication, and it could be due to inadequate ventilation or inadequate oxygenation. Both of them are important, but inadequate oxygenation and inadequate ventilation due to various reasons can be the primary indication of mechanical ventilation. You can see here, this is the chain of things or organs in our system which ultimately leads to respiratory failure. We have got the respiratory center in the brain, we have got the neuromuscular connections, we have got the thoracic bellows, like the rib cage, and we have got the airways, the upper and the lower airways, and the lung parenchyma. So all these are important, and any leak in any of in the disruption in any of the link can cause respiratory failure. To continue with the indications, we have cardiac insufficiency also at many times that could also prompt a decision of starting mechanical ventilation. And last but not the least, neurologic dysfunctions are also important, central hypoventilation, and patient when they are comatose with GCS score less than 8, and inability to protect the airways, because to protect the airways is also very, very important. So with this kind of background, we have come to know that which patients are to be ventilated and what kind of ventilators, how ventilators have come of age over the last few decades or few centuries. We'll just see, have a quick go through. To begin with, the ventilators we started was a negative pressure ventilator. As we all know, in the normal physiology, if you recap our physiology, we have a negative pressure in our system. Normally what happens is there is a negative pressure, we suck in the air, and then during expiration we expel the air. So physiologically it is similar. The first negative pressure ventilator was developed way back in 1894 in that era by Philip Drinker, and it was known as Drinker respirator. Associated was Louis Agassiz Shaw Jr., and they both were professors of industrial hygiene, mind you, at the Harvard School of Public Health. The machine basically was powered by an electric motor with air pumps from two vacuum cleaners. The air pumps changed the pressure inside a rectangular, airtight metal box, pulling air in and out of the lungs. And this was the kind of machine which they used to, they began with, and that was widely used in fact to begin with. But there were many disadvantages, and gradually it gave way to positive pressure ventilators. This is the infamous polio epidemic of 1955, when actually the positive pressure ventilators came into being, and then the era of critical care also began. You can see the negative pressure ventilators, they are being used for that infamous polio epidemic which hit all over Europe in 1955. And actually at that time, positive pressure ventilators, the concept came up, and basically what it does, it inflates the lungs by exerting positive pressure on the airways, similar to the bellows mechanism, forcing the alveoli to expand during inspiration. And expiration occurs passively. Modern ventilators nowadays are all positive pressure ventilators and are classified based on their related features, principles and engineering. So a quick word about how it began. Actually, the credit of the first beginning is given to Andrea Vesalius way back in 1555, and it took more than 400 years actually when this epidemic happened then to actual development of positive pressure ventilators, and that at the Massachusetts General Hospital after 400 years began the era of critical care medicine, what we see today. So a quick overview about how the ventilators act. Basically it is a complex system consisting of a power supply, has got a compressed air and oxygen, has got a drive mechanism to provide motive force to push oxygen into the patient's lungs, and a control mechanism to manage the gas flow, volume, pressure and timing. These are the basic features of any ventilator by which different modes and different types of ventilators are designed. Then it is connected to the patient's lungs through the breathing hoses and a special tube, we all know the endotracheal tube, inserted into the patient's airway. In the vast majority of the patients, it is a temporizing measure. We must remember that ventilation is not a therapy all the time. It is kind of a supportive treatment, and it is expected that the patient would be weaned off the ventilator in due course of time when the situation improves. Because of the ubiquity of the procedure, the actual number of patients receiving mechanical ventilation daily is relatively unknown. But the latest study from the National Nosocomial Infection Surveillance, it was seen that 2.5 million patient days of mechanical ventilation were recorded in more than 300 hospitals over a period of 101 months. So you can see that there are various uses of mechanical ventilation all over the world, and it could be used in various ways in different hospitals. There are various indications and the protocolized so that it could be used for benefit of the critically ill patients. So what are the key decisions when you start, you begin your mechanical ventilation? Whether the indications as I have enumerated, they are present or not, whether you should start with a non-invasive or a invasive ventilation, what kind, type and method of establishment of airway, usually it is endotracheal tube, pressure versus volume ventilation, choice of the ventilation and different modes of ventilation. In the typical setting, what the person is or the critical care specialist or the attending doctor is supposed to set is an FiO2, is the rate, the volume, the peak inspiratory pressure and the positive end expiratory pressure, flow rate, inspiratory time, inspiration expiration ratio, size if necessary, inspiratory pause, etc., and then finally the mode. These all actually are dependent on the mode, which mode you are going to put the patient on, and on that only these different parameters and the vocabularies, I will come into that. But we must remember that these kind of control panels we see in many ventilators. There are various brands available now, but whatever be the brand available at your hospital or institution, they have ultimate function same. So it doesn't really matter. You should only know the control knobs, how it increases, how it decreases, and what happens if you press this, because most of the ventilators have got a touch screen nowadays. So it is usually quite easy because it is quite user friendly nowadays, and they give the message that what should be done if this happens, what should be done if that happens. So this vocabulary, as I was talking to you, tidal volume setting is the most important thing to begin with. It is the amount of gas delivered with each present breath, and in mechanically ventilated patient it is usually set at the rate of 6 to 8 ml per kilogram of body weight. Respiratory rate is another important parameter, the frequency of the breaths delivered by the ventilator. Fraction of the inspired oxygen, FiO2, that is also very, very important. What we normally inhale in room air is 21%, or in our jugular we call it as 0.21, the FiO2 of 0.21, that is 21%. So how you increase it, what is the necessity of the patient, that you can set in a blender. Actually all the ventilators has got a blender inside, and that thereby they provide that amount of oxygen, that percentage of oxygen to the patient. And the ventilatory mode, there are various modes, control modes, intermediate modes, then SIMB, synchronous modes, and assist control modes. I'll come into that in details later. Then we have got a provision of SAI. SAI is nothing, we all take or have SAIs during the course of the day. During a scientific lecture also we have SAIs. So that kind of thing you can also apply here for the benefit of the patients, but it is no longer routinely used. Sensitivity of the ventilator is also important because it determines the patient's effort to initiate an assisted breath, because assist control mode nowadays is the commonest mode to begin with for mechanical ventilation. And the IE ratio is also very important because the expiratory time is the time when carbon dioxide is exhaled from our body. And if there is retention of carbon dioxide for any reason, then you should increase the expiratory time so that adequate ventilation occurs from the system. This is peak inspiratory pressure is also very important, because barotrauma is something which we are very much concerned with nowadays, and this peak inspiratory pressure ultimately determines whether the patient is going to develop barotrauma or not. And then adjuncts to mechanical ventilation, we know we have got positive end expiratory pressure, that is PEEP, or continuous positive airway pressure, or CPAP, or pressure support ventilation, or PSV. These are the different adjuncts of ventilation by which different benefits can be given to the patients. The pressure limit is also important. A high pressure limit is the maximum pressure the ventilator can generate to deliver the preset tidal volume. So that is also important to set. Now, as I was talking to you, the different modes of ventilation, I will quickly run through this, because there are various modes, various advanced modes are also available nowadays, but it's not possible to cover everything in this short time. Control mode is something which is very common to begin with. That is the mode which we apply. The advantage is that it has got a guaranteed minute volume or the peak pressure, because whatever you set, it is going to deliver, irrespective of what the patient wants or irrespective of what the patient is trying to do. So that is the major disadvantage of this mode, and that's why assist control mode has come into vogue nowadays, because that actually senses the patient's need and the patient's will, and thereby adjusts the delivery according to the patient's hemodynamics, the patient's respiratory physiology. So that is why assist control mode is very, very important nowadays. But also it has got its own problems of respiratory alkalosis. Overventilation or hyperventilation is always a problem with this. Synchronized intermittent mandatory ventilation is one of the things which is very much in use now as a weaning mode. In fact, when we try to wean patients from the ventilators, this is one mode which we apply. And major advantage is that it improves venous return and decreases the mean airway pressure, thereby lessening the chances of barotrauma. Of course, the disadvantage is increased oxygen consumption, because it senses the patient's need and accordingly delivers everything, so the oxygen consumption is more. Pressure control ventilation is also important in few subsettings where particularly the airway pressure is raised because of some illnesses in the patient, and their pressure control mode is very important. The advantage is that there is full ventilatory support and the mean airway pressure is restricted, so that the chances of barotrauma is not there. Pressure support ventilation is one adjunct which we are using nowadays, but again it has got its own merits and demerits. PEEP is something which we should use, and that is because nowadays PEEP is given for improved oxygenation. If we want to improve oxygenation, somehow the SpO2 value is not improving, or in ABG you are seeing that the PaO2 value is not improving, then actually we try to apply PEEP. And that is why PEEP is as an essential tool for most of the critical care specialists nowadays. When the patient is breathing spontaneously, at that time the same thing of PEEP can be applied through CPAP or continuous positive airway pressure. So thereby we come to know that these are the various usual modes which we apply in a mechanical ventilation. But you can see in this chart that these are the modes and what are the things which I had told you that these are the 4 important parameters: volume, pressure, flow and inspiratory time. So you can see here that in the volume control mode, your volume and flow and inspiratory time all are fixed. Only pressure is variable because it has to deliver a preset volume to the patient's lungs. So that's why the pressure is variable. In pressure control mode, on the contrary, pressure is fixed and the inspiratory time is fixed. Volume and flow are variable. Whereas in the pressure support ventilation, you can see that everything is variable except the pressure. You just fix the pressure so that there is no chance of barotrauma, and everything else is going to be decided by the patient need, and that will be sensed by the ventilator. So you know how to troubleshoot. These are the things which we are often called for. There is either the PCO2 is too high, or the PCO2 is too low, or PO2 is too high, or PO2 is too low. After doing an arterial blood gas, these are the features which we come across, and then we have to adjust the ventilator setting, thereby giving the adequate and what is essential for the patient. Now, if the positive peak inspiratory pressure remains too high, then the chance of barotrauma increases, and therefore that is another important thing which has to be adjusted. Now the complications of mechanical ventilation, there are many actually, and that should be that message actually I wanted to get across to all of you, that mechanical ventilation is a life-saving measure, but it has its own demerits as well. So it's not that if you put a patient on mechanical ventilation, something good is only going to happen. Many bads are also going to happen, and so that should be always kept in mind, and thereby one should not jump to the conclusion that if the patient is critically ill, you just attach the patient to ventilator and everything is going to be fine. Barotrauma is one of the major factors, and that actually has given way to many other different modes which we come across today because of the fear of barotrauma, so that we minimize the pressure at which the oxygen is delivered to the patient's lungs. Then another complication is the cardiovascular complication. We all know the hemodynamics get jeopardized when we start mechanically ventilating the patient. Stress ulcers, GI bleeding, etc. in the gastrointestinal system. Then in the tracheal damage and necrosis, that is also important. If we keep the endotracheal tube for a very long time, those things are going to happen. Acid-base disturbances are very important. That's why you need to do arterial blood gas every now and then to see what is happening to the arterial blood gas. Then oxygen toxicity, too much is also not good. So too much of oxygen if you give, that can also give rise to oxygen toxicity, and that has got many implications in our body. Aspiration of our gastric contents is also a fear, and thereby it can lead to many other problems in the lungs, ARDS, etc. So aspiration is another complication which should be taken care of. Infection is a major problem actually of mechanical ventilation and intubation. Suctioning, proper handling of the endotracheal tube, oral care, oral hygiene, these are issues which have been addressed all over the world, but still the final answer is yet to be obtained. Water imbalance in the body because of the ADH release has been a concern now for many critical care specialists, and so putting a patient on mechanical ventilation is also dreaded with water imbalance and increase in body weight. Immobility of the patient because the patient cannot move while on mechanical ventilation can lead to many other problems in our system. Then comes the psychological complications. We all know that confinement to a machine, you cannot breathe on your own, you cannot talk, you cannot communicate. Those are the things, of course we can communicate with writing, but even then there is a huge psychological burden of mechanical ventilation on the patient. And ventilator dependence is another that comes from the psychological imbalance actually, that the patient don't want to actually breathe on their own. So that is something which basically can be taken care of if we, now we are actually having the kind of ventilator holidays, that if you put a patient on ventilator for a pretty long time, then possibly for a day or two, you put the patient off ventilator so that the patient can have his own breathing, and if he or she feels that he or she is having his own system coming back to him, and then gradually put him again on ventilator on the third day. So there are many biochemical and biophysical injuries which have led to many other complications from ventilation and ultimately death. We all have seen that in our practice. So that is one thing which should be taken care of. Just a couple of slides more. And weaning is another thing which is very important for mechanical ventilation, because once you put the patient on ventilation, you have to take the patient out of ventilation also. So the indication should be stable blood pressure and not receiving any vasoactive medications. This is very, very important for all the postgraduate trainees and the doctors who are practicing critical care in their institutions. Respiratory rate should be more than 10 but should be less than 30. Temperature should be more than 36 degrees Celsius and should not be less than also. There is a cutoff value. And EtCO2 or the end-tidal carbon dioxide should be between 35 and 50 millimeter mercury. And our goal is that there should be minimal ventilator support necessary at that point of time when we decide to wean the patients. And these are the various signs and symptoms which should be present when you decide to wean a patient. There should be features of adequate ventilation, there should be features of adequate oxygenation, and there should be features of adequate airway so that the patient can maintain the adequate airway. So if these things are available, these things are present, when you decide to wean the patient, I think that is the time when you can actually wean the patient and put the patient off ventilator. I am skipping the advanced modes because this is not, I think, the forum where you should talk about advanced modes. But one can see that mechanical ventilation is something when it started with a very simple concept that there are some machine which is going to give extra volume of oxygen under pressure to the patient's lungs, because the patient lungs is capable of doing that for that patient. But ultimately it has come a long way, and many options and many therapeutic options are now available which are actually helpful in treating various kind of patients. So we've got three options for ventilation to conclude: volume, pressure and flow, and what is to be used for a particular patient, that needs to be determined. You should also know when to say no to PEEP, because PEEP is something which we often apply, but it has got its demerits also. And always assess to prevent barotrauma. That is a major concern all over the world. So the take-home message for all of us should be that mechanical ventilation is a complex supportive therapy for patients with respiratory failure. The optimal outcomes for these patients are achieved through the skilled delivery of care by a multidisciplinary team. In fact, many open-ended ICUs, actually ICUs could be closed ICUs and open ICUs. In open-ended ICUs, they have got a psychiatrist also in the team, because the psychiatrist has got a major role in weaning those patients who are put on ventilator for a pretty long time. And of course, essential components of care include management of the airway and ventilator, as well as physical care, emotional support, pain and anxiety control, and prevention of complications. So we know that this is the kind of setup which we all have in most of the ICUs nowadays, with lots of complex gadgets, lots of kinds of ventilators, infusion pumps and everything. But ICU nurse is something which who can actually deliver the goods to the patient. It's kind of a deep sea where many things are unknown. Thank you everybody for a patient hearing.
Thank you.
I don't think that any